Hi friends, welcome to the second part of the lecture series on ECG interpretation. In this lecture, we will have a look on ECGs of myocardial infarction, ventricular hypertrophy, atrial enlargement. Please watch the first part of this lecture series to have better understanding and kindly consider subscribing to the channel for more such content. Let's begin. This lecture is very important because the early recognition of ECG changes of MI can give life-saving treatment to the patient, which markedly improves the survivability of the patient. We'll first review the normal ECG, then acute myocardial infarction, how to localize acute MI from the ECG, ST elevation versus depression, then acute inferior wall MI, acute anterior wall MI, what are the ECG changes as the MI heals, evolution of the changes during acute MI, then we'll have a look on pericarditis following a case, then LV hypertrophy, RV hypertrophy, atrial enlargement, and we will conclude this lecture with the cases. First of all, ECG shows the electrical depolarization of the heart. It is a simple, cheap and easy test, usually done as the first test. It is accurate for ischemia, acute MI, ventricular hypertrophy, arrhythmias, etc. But it should be kept in mind that ECG has many non-specific and non-diagnostic patterns. So here is our P wave followed by PR segment, QRS complex, ST segment, T wave and an occasional U wave. Now changes during an acute MI. An acute myocardial infarction is a heart attack. It causes changes in T waves, ST segments, Q waves. The Q waves represent the electrical holes in the heart. Remember, normally the ECG complex has a Q wave which is small and narrow, but it becomes pathological when the Q wave is having a large negative deflection or is very wide. This represents non-viable myocardial tissue. Now, again the normal ECG, it has a P wave which should be less than 2.5 small boxes in height and width. PR segment, QRS complex which should be less than 2.5 small boxes in width. ST segment, then T wave. ST segment and T wave both shows ventricular repolarization and occasional U wave which can be seen in patients of hypokalemia. The PR interval is normally 3 to 5 small boxes, that is 0.12 to 0.2 seconds. On the other hand, the QT interval is 0.33 to 0.46 second. So this is a ECG with a normal sinus rhythm, have a normal QRS complexes, normal P wave. Now let's have a look on the normal sinus rhythm and normal complexes in the systematic approach. First we will check the calibration, then rhythm, rate, various intervals, axis, P wave morphology, QRS morphology, then ST segment and T wave. First the calibration as shown by this box is normal, that is 10 mm is equals to 1 millivolt. Then the rhythm, in the rhythm strip is P wave followed by QRS and each QRS is preceded by P wave. It is the normal sinus rhythm. Rhythm is normal. Rate, the large boxes between two R waves are almost 4 large boxes. So rate is 300 upon 4, that is 75. Intervals, PR interval and QT interval. PR interval appears normal, QT interval also appears normal, interval normal. Axis in lead 1 and lead AVF both are upright, so axis is also normal. P wave best seen in lead 2, which is less than 2.5 small boxes in height as well as width. QRS complex in all the leads are narrow, normal QRS complexes, and has a transition from V4, so normal transition. ST segment and T waves are normal, not depressed nor elevated. So this is a normal ECG. Now let's have a look on some ECGs of myocardial infarction. By the way, the ECG not only helps us in diagnosis of MI but also gives prognostic information, like the ECG changes can be ST elevated or non-ST elevated. In this ST elevation, MI has a grave prognosis. On the other hand, in ST elevation, what is the degree of ST elevation? Depending on the extent of changes, this can be quantified as mild, moderate to severe. Acute MI presents as ST elevation or depression as well as inverted T waves. Now, how can we localize acute MI? Depending on where the change has occurred, the different leads can give us the rough idea of the location of MI. For example, the 2-3 AVF. These are considered as inferior leads. These are considered as inferior leads and tell us about inferior and posterior wall MI. Inferior as well as posterior wall MI. On the other hand, V1, V2. These are our anteroseptal leads and tells us about anteroseptal MI. V3 and V4. V3 and V4. This is our anterior wall. Anterior wall. V1, V2 is anteroseptal. Anteroseptal. And there are lateral leads, which are V5, V6, 1 and AVL. These are lateral leads. So by checking out that where are we getting the changes in the leads, like T wave changes, Q waves, ST segment changes, we can localize the acute MI. For example, inferior wall MI or antero wall MI, anteroseptal or lateral wall MI. Now ST elevation MI versus non-ST elevation MI. ST elevation MI, also known as STEMI, produce more tissue damage and have a worse prognosis. On the other hand, non-ST elevation MI show ST segment depression. It is important to note that ST segment depression can be caused by reversible myocardial ischemia, as in the cases of angina. So in this angina, it is a reversible ST segment depression. That is, it go back to normal when the patient takes rest. Go back to normal after rest, and it can be reproduced with exercise testing. Reproduced by exercise testing. So this is the principle of exercise test or stress test, that we reproduce the ST segment depression by increasing exercise and can demonstrate the future risk for CAD. The normal ST segment should be flat. It should be isoelectric, but it is normal. It is if it is up to 0.5 mm or less than half small box in limb leads. If ST segment is depressed, that is around 1 small box in depth, we can consider causes like ischemia, electrolyte abnormalities like hypokalemia, and digitalis effect. As we have already discussed, digoxin effect has a sagging ST segment. Ischemia has a flat ST segment. On the other hand, hypokalemia has mildly downsloping ST segment along with flattened T wave and an occasional U wave. These are the changes with hypokalemia. So in the first ECG, there is mild, very minimal ST segment depression. This is seen in cases of ischemia, example angina, and it is a reversible ST depression which can be reproduced by exercise test. On the second ECG, there is a large ST depression which is the case of non-ST segment elevation MI. It is due to the cell death of in myocardial infarction. The non-STEMI or non-ST segment elevation MI has a infarct, usually subendocardial. On the other hand, ST segment elevation MI has a transmural infarct. So in non-ST elevation, there is a small injury which is only localized to subendocardial part of the ventricular muscle mass. On the other hand, ST segment elevation has a transmural injury associated with electrical holes in the heart. And minimal ST segment depression, which is reversible, can be found in angina or ischemia, which can be reproduced by exercise test. Now coming on to the various patterns and lead changes in different types of myocardial infarction. This pattern can help us recognize that which artery is to be explored first in the cath lab for better patient management. In this ECG, there is ST segment elevation in lead 2, 3 and AVS. Lead 2, lead 3 and lead AVF. This is the case of inferior wall MI. There is associated ST depression in leads 1 and AVL. ST depression in leads 1 and AVL. These are the reciprocal ST depression. These are reciprocal ST depression because these leads are opposite to the inferior leads. This can be considered as a mirror image of ST elevation. This ST depression is very important to mark the diagnosis of MI, and this is the evidence that ST elevation is from acute MI and not any other cause. In inferior wall MI, in 90% cases, the artery involved is right coronary artery, which supplies the inferior wall in 90% cases, but in 10% cases, the LCX can be involved in inferior wall MI, and it is associated with changes in lateral leads also, that is V5, V6, 1 and AVL. Now here is the ECG which shows ST segment elevation in leads 2, 3 AVF, that is inferior leads, but there is ST depression in V1 and V2. So this ST depression in V1 and V2 suggests that there is a concurrent posterior wall infarction. Concurrent posterior wall infarction along with inferior wall, because posterior wall is also supplied by RC or LCX. Now this is the ECG showing acute anterior wall MI, which has a ST elevation from leads V2 to V6, V2 to V6. It is most commonly due to LAD occlusion, left anterior descending artery. In this we can see that ST elevations are almost up to 7 to 8 mm in size. It is a very dangerous MI because there are very large, huge ST elevations, and the most likely artery which is occluded is LAD. We have to rush the patient to cath lab and open the LAD again. Now identify this MI. We can see ST elevation in V2 as well as V3, but these are very small ST elevations, so this time this ECG is a less serious case of MI because ST elevations are small. It has a favorable prognosis. Now what are the ECG changes as the MI heals? The ECG leads with ST elevation develop initial Q waves, which represent the electrical holes in the heart, and these stay there stay there for very long and represent the scar tissue. With time, the ST elevation which occurred in ST elevation MI becomes flat again and the T waves become inverted. Q waves can persist as the permanent reminder of the old MI, and over time the T waves which have inverted usually become upright. Now diagnosing abnormal Q waves. These are usually seen in older, usually healed MI. The normal Q waves are one small box wide and two small box deep. It is a normal Q wave. But the larger Q wave, which is more than one small box wide or more than small boxes deep, is pathological Q waves. These are usually the sign of prior myocardial infarction. For example, if we can see Q waves in lead 2-3 AVF, it is a old inferior wall MI. Now let's have a look on an example. In this ECG, there is a progressive ST elevation and Q wave formation in leads V2 to V5. This is the ST segment elevation, and there is initial negative deflection, which is a Q wave more than 2 mm in depth. This is a pathological Q wave. ST elevation is now present in 1 and AVL also. ST elevation in V2 to V5 along with 1 and AVL. So this is a case of most probably anterolateral MI. There is some reciprocal ST depression in lead 3. ST depression in lead 3, which represents that this is a case of MI because of we can see the reciprocal ST depression. So this is an acute anterior ST elevation MI. This patient needs urgent reperfusion. Now coming on to the evolution of changes during an acute attack of MI. In the first ECG, it is a normal P wave followed by QRS and T wave. In the beginning of MI, there is a development of hyperacute elevated tall T waves. It is only seen early after the onset of MI. So in this second figure, we can see tall hyperacute T waves. Then there is a beginning of ST segment elevation which can persist for some days. ST segment elevation, we can see this ST segment elevation. Then there is T wave inversion and Q wave development. Now here we have developed a Q wave along with inverted T wave. T wave inversion plus Q wave. After some time, the ST elevation improves, but in this case the T wave is still inverted and there is presence of a Q wave also. As time passes, after years or so, the T wave also normalizes, that is upright T wave, but the Q wave is now persistent. Q wave is now persistent, which shows the old changes. So the Q wave, if only a Q wave is present, it is usually a old MI, and the computer gives the diagnosis as, for example, Q wave is present in 2-3 AVF, it will give the diagnosis as infarct and age undetermined. A new right or left bundle branch block after an MI suggests that it is a very large MI and it has a very poor prognosis. ST segment elevation in more than one zone if present, for example inferior zone as well as anterior zone, without any reciprocal ST depressions, suggest the pericarditis as the diagnosis, and it should be considered in these cases. By the way, ECG from monitor leads should not be used to draw conclusions about QRS and ST segment morphology because these change with the position of the patient. Computer ECG interpretation is not accurate enough and it should be confirmed by an experienced electrocardiographer. The best way to become an expert in ECG is to practice. Now, what can be the abnormalities in the T waves? First of all, we should know what are the normal T waves. The normal T waves are upright in leads V3 and V6 and lead 1 and 2. So if it is inverted in V1, V2, it can be a normal variant, but it should be upright in V3 to V6 and leads 1 and 2. It is always inverted in AVR and variable in all other leads. If the T waves are inverted, we consider it as a possibly a normal variant. For example, in a young and healthy person, if a T waves are inverted, it can be a normal variant. T waves can invert in ischemia or non-ST segment elevation MI, as we have already discussed. There can be inversion in hypertrophy patterns like LVH from aortic stenosis, long-standing hypertension, or hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. T waves can also support the diagnosis of stroke. In this, there is a prolonged QT interval along with T wave inversion due to autonomic nervous system alteration. Metabolic abnormalities like hypokalemia, metabolic acidosis, as well as hypoxemia, these all can lead to T wave changes. What are the difference in morphology of T wave in ischemia, stroke, and hypertrophic cardiomyopathy? In ischemia, there is small T wave inversion without any change in QT interval. On the other hand, the stroke, as we have discussed, leads to increased prolongation of QT interval along with broad-based T inversion. On the other hand, in hypertrophy patterns like hypertrophic cardiomyopathy or LVH, there is a ECG changes of LVH along with STT changes, which is considered as the strain pattern. This is the strain pattern with very large negative deflection of T waves along with ST depression. Now let's see what are the ECG changes in a case of pericarditis. In this, there is a diffuse ST segment elevation and there is a absence of diffuse ST segment elevation in more than one zone, that is anterior as well as inferior, or there is a absence of reciprocal ST segment depression. Therefore, it is not a ST segment elevation MI. In this ECG, we can see there is ST elevation in lead 1, 2, AVL, AVF, V2 to V6. So there is a ST elevation in more than one zone, that is anterior, inferior as well as lateral. This is not a diagnosis of ST segment elevation MI. In this case, the diagnosis is pericarditis. But how to confirm that it is definitely a pericarditis? We ask the patient to take a deep breath. If the pain increases during deep inspiration due to pleuritic pain, since we all know that pericarditis leads to pleuritic inflammation and pleuritic chest pain, we can confirm the diagnosis of pericarditis, and these are usually young patients without any risk factors for MI. Now let's have a case discussion. A 72-year-old man with diabetes and low blood pressure. So a 72-year-old with diabetes and a history of elevated blood cholesterol and hypertension. So diabetes along with hypertension, these are all the risk factors for atherosclerosis. Comes to the hospital complaining of feelings of indigestion in the upper abdomen and lower chest. He is sweating and has a low BP, 94/62 milliliter mercury. His heart rate is 54 beats per minute. So the non-specific chest discomfort, there is non-specific chest discomfort, non-specific chest pain, and a history of diabetes, which is a high risk for cardiovascular diseases, coming with thoracic discomfort along with hypotension and bradycardia. As soon as we get the ECG of this patient, we see ST segment elevations in lead 2, 3, AVF, along with reciprocal depressions in 1 and AVL. So this is a diagnosis of inferior wall MI. This usually presents with bradycardia and hypotension due to vagal stimulation. Inferior wall MI causes vagal stimulation. What is the management? Rush to the cath lab and open up the RCA, which is involved in 90% cases of inferior wall MI. Now let's see a second case. A 18-year-old man with pressure feeling under sternum. A 18-year student comes to the hospital complaining of pressure feeling under his sternum, that is breastbone. The pressure has lasted for 2 hours and gets worse when he takes a deep breath. His physical examination is unremarkable. So it is a pleuritic chest pain. When we get his ECG, there is global ST segment elevation, diffuse ST segment elevation, in this case in leads 2, 3, lead 1, AVL and V2 to V6. So this is a case of most probably acute pericarditis. For confirmation, when we do the 2D echocardiography, it shows small amount of pericardial fluid. So this confirms the diagnosis as pericarditis, acute pericarditis. So diagnosis is acute pericarditis. Most common cause is viral. Most common cause is viral. There are no reciprocal changes, no reciprocal ST depression. There is generalized ST segment elevation and echo is showing us pericardial fluid. What is the management? The management is colchicine and NSAIDs, and this patient will be usually fine by 2 weeks. Now coming on to the ECG changes, we can find in left ventricular hypertrophy and or dilatation. Although ECG is not an accurate tool as MRI or echo for hypertrophy patterns, but when present they are quite severe and has major clinical implications. The left ventricle has a more muscle mass than the right ventricle, therefore it dominates the ECG by its electrical activity. As the left ventricular muscle mass increases, the R wave voltage increases, reflecting the greater amount of LV muscle mass. The R wave voltage will increase in the corresponding ventricular leads, that is, for left ventricle, the R wave voltage will increase in leads V5, V6, which are the lateral leads, as well as lead 1 and AVL. So what all are the ECG changes? There will be tall R waves in V5, V6, lead 1 and AVL. There will be deep S waves opposite to the leads V5, V6, that is in lead V1 and V2. There can be a QRS widening, left axis deviation, usually minus 40 to minus 60 degree in LVH. There can be associated STT changes, which is a strain pattern. This is seen in more severe cases and has a poor prognosis. There can be associated left atrial enlargement due to back pressure on left atria. Now we have some different types of criteria for diagnosis of LVH. As we have already discussed, the first criteria is S wave in V1 or V2, the depth of S wave in V1 or V2 plus the height of R wave in V5 or V6. If it is more than 35 mm, it is diagnosis of LVH. Or if we consider alone the lead V5 or V6, so the R wave height in V5 or V6, if it is more than 25 mm, it is LVH. If we consider lead 3, the R wave in lead 3, if more than 13 mm, or R wave height in lead AVL more than 12 mm. These all are the criteria for diagnosing LVH. Lead V5, V6, 1 and AVL are taken because these all are lateral leads in the direction of left ventricle. So in this ECG we can see the S wave depth in V1 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 20 small boxes, and the R wave height in V6 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 25 small boxes. So it is coming out to be 55. This is the diagnosis of LVH. And also we can see STT changes, that is ST segment depression and T wave inversion in all the lateral leads, that is V5, V6, 1 and AVL. So it is also a strain pattern. This is a very severe type of LVH, and it has a poor prognosis. Again, there are deep S waves in lead V2 and tall R waves in lead V5 along with STD changes. The S wave depth and R wave height combined are coming to be 55 mm, that is 5.5 millivolt, which is very huge, and it is a strain pattern. Now coming on to diagnosis of RVH from the ECG. The ECG changes which are seen in RVH are tall R waves are in V1, that is right sided leads, which is V1. Tall R wave more than 7 mm in V1 diagnosis RVH. There will be deep S waves in the lateral leads, that are the opposite leads 1 and AVL along with V5 and V6. Usually it is a right axis deviation more than 90 degree. A tall peaked wave more than 2 mm, more than 2.5 mm suggests associated right atrial enlargement. It often accompanies RVH because of back pressure change. So the RVH is usually shown in the lead V1 with a tall R wave, and the right ventricle almost always has less muscle mass compared with the left ventricle. Therefore the criteria is less voltage, that is more than 7 mm. So let's see with the help of ECG. There are tall R waves in lead V1 and V2, V1 and V2 tall R waves, deep S waves in the lateral leads, that is 1 AVL and V6. There is right axis deviation, as we can see, negative wave, negative dominance in lead 1 and positive dominance in AVF, as we have discussed in the first lecture, and the tall P waves due to associated right enlargement. P wave morphology is best seen in lead 2. There are tall P waves which is due to associated right atrial enlargement. In this case, we can also see the STT changes, that is ST depression T wave inversion. This is known as RV strain pattern. This means that the RV hypertrophy is so severe and it is having a poor prognosis. Now coming on to the final part of this lecture, the P wave morphology and voltage. So the normal P wave duration is less than 0.1 second, that is less than 2.5 small boxes. It is upright in lead 1 and 2 and negative deflection less than 1 box wide and 1 box deep in V1. So the P waves are best seen in lead 2. Normal is less than 2.5 small boxes in width and height. Abnormal can be absent P wave in junctional rhythm, dyselectrolytemia, atrial fibrillation, right atrial enlargement. In lead 2 is height more than 2.5 mm, or lead V1 is upward deflection more than 1.5 mm. On the other hand, left atrial enlargement lead 2 with a width more than 2.5 mm, or in V1 by a negative deflection of P wave more than 1 mm. So this is a table comparing RA and LA enlargement. RA enlargement in lead V2 is diagnosed by height of P wave more than 2.5 mm and positive reflection more than 1.5 mm in lead V1. On the other hand, LA enlargement in lead V2, the width should be more than 2.5 mm, or the negative deflection of P wave in lead V1 should be more than 1 mm. In this case, here we can see right atrial enlargement, tall P waves in lead 2, this is known as P pulmonale. It is more than 2.5 mm, and in this lead 2, it is a broad P wave, usually seen as a M pattern, more than 2.5 mm width. This is a P mitral, or in V1 we can see a negative deflection of more than 1 mm, This is a case of P mitral due to LA enlargement. Now let's see a few cases. A 58-year-old man comes to the emergency department complaining of shortness of breath. When he walks, he says that he was once told to be had a high BP but decided he did not like doctors, so he never sought any evaluation or treatment. Shortness of breath along with high blood pressure, that is hypertension. Physical examination has a BP of 190 by 108. 96 beats per minute. Physical examination shows sign of early heart failure. So this is a case of patient coming with dyspnea, having a high BP and signs of heart failure. When we see the ECG of this patient, we can see there are deep S waves, almost 23 mm deep in lead V1, along with tall R waves, almost 23 mm in height, which becomes 46 mm. So this is a case of LVH. Along also we can see STT changes in lead V5, V6 along with lead 1 and AVL, which are the lateral leads. So this is a LVH with strain pattern. Coming on to the next case, a 49-year-old woman with shortness of breath and fatigue. Patient complains of increasing shortness of breath and fatigue over last year. She was well before that then with no history of rheumatic fever. Physical examination reveals loud pulmonary component of its second heart sound and swelling of lower legs. So, a female complaining of dyspnea, signs of pulmonary hypertension and edema. Let's see the ECG of this patient. When we see the ECG of this patient, we can see there are tall R waves in lead V1 more than 7 mm and also lead V2 and deep S waves in the lateral leads like 1 and AVL. Along with this, there is tall P wave, that is P pulmonale, which is due to associated right atrial enlargement. So this is a case of right ventricular hypertrophy. Thank you so much guys. Please like the video if you like this presentation.